Okay, we're returning to a stool that we've previously cleaned, and we're going to try and address some of the scratches and scuffs on the top. Some of these scratches are cat scratches. Cats love to scratch leather. Some of these are on the top, but they very often like to scratch round the side because their claws are hooked and it digs into the leather when it pulls. A cat scratch is quite characteristic because you can quite often see little shreds of leather sticking out of the scratch where the claws have come back out. The other thing with a cat scratch, it makes it obvious, is that when it scratches the leather, it tends to tuck the bit that it's scratched underneath. If you look, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but if you look at it, the leather that has been pulled back is tucked underneath, and it makes it quite tricky to repair. That's what we're going to try and repair some of these cat scratches. To do that, you need a magnifying glass. I'm using a linen checker, but any magnifying glass will do, just so you can see what you're doing. The more time you spend putting the leather back to where it was before, the more effective your repair will be. So we need a magnifying glass, you need a pin, or anything pointed, the end of a scalpel, something like that. We need a leather glue. I'm using, again, Gliptone's structural adhesive. It's a nice forgiving glue. If you get it on the leather, you can just ball it off with your finger afterwards. And we also need some dye to match. You can send a sample. You can see my little sample that I sent to Gliptone here. You can send a sample to Gliptone and they'll send you back as much as you want, but this is a 65ml bottle. It will do a huge amount of coverage. The dye is ready matched to the leather on top, makes the job an awful lot easier. The first thing we're going to do is try and stick the damage back down where it would. So if we can just put a little bit of glue to the side, put a magnifying glass over the top, and we're going to try and tease the repair out so that the leather that the cat very kindly tucked underneath is now exposed. Tiny little bit of glue in there, as far into the damage as we can. Try and get it under all the areas that need to be glued. And then we just tease it back into position. Job for patience. The more time we spend teasing that back into position, the better. And you can see that the damage is already beginning to disappear because we've glued that back down. And we're quite fortunate with that one. A lot of the leather was still there, so it's glued nicely back into place. Do a couple more round about it. There's another little one here. So we lift all the damaged areas first so that we can get the glue underneath. The tool I'm using at the moment is an upholsterer skewer, but any pin that you're comfortable with will do. And just push it back neatly into place. And if we take our colour, put a small amount, maybe just into the cap. I'm using a scalpel here, but you can use the edge of a Stanley knife blade. You can use a palette knife, something like that. Just something that we can scrape the colour into the damage. So a little bit of the dye is thick, so we can just pull it into the repair. Gliptone have done a good job today. The colour match is very good. And you can see the damage beginning to disappear. Next thing is a standard hairdryer. Nothing clever about it. If you're using one, you want one that is more than 2 kilowatt. A small hairdryer will work, it just takes a longer time. All the hairdryer is doing is drying the dye. Just lift your little, in case it flies across the living room. Okay, I've been working away on this side of the stool and I've stuck down a lot of parts. I've put some colour into other parts. What's beginning to emerge is some of the areas where colour alone is just not going to repair them. You can see bits there where I'm pointing with the pin. So we're going to put in a little bit of filler. What we're using is Aquafill from Liquid Leather by Gliptone. I'm just going to put a tiny, tiny amount of these into the bits where the surface is actually missing. It's a white paste, it's water-based, and we just want to tease it into the bits where the surface is missing. What you can do is just put your eye down level with the surface, and it's a good indication of how it's working, because you'll see the damaged areas sticking up, and you know that's a place where it needs a bit more care and attention. See, this is a palette knife I'm using, which is again available from Liquid Leather. Don't leave the lid off this too long, because it is water based and it does dry out, and it's a lot less easy to work with. It's dried out, quite a deep hole here, so scrape that into it. Nearly finished on this side. So that's about 1/2 of the stool done.